Hello, hello. This is Orren Merton, and you are listening to A Guide from the Perplexed, number 4. The music that you heard at the opener is a song called Misery by my project Ember After, and I will get to the significance of that later, but I wanted to first talk a little bit about why I decided after a very, very long dry spell to do another Guide from the Perplexed podcast. For those of you who follow my ramblings on my blog at orrenmerton.com, you've heard me talk about writing a novel, that occasionally I would talk about where I am, or that I'm going to duck under and stay off the interwebs for a while and write. Well, I'm done. I finished the first draft of my second novel. That is a really big milestone in the life of a novel. For those of you who aren't writers, the first draft of the novel is when you basically take what's in your imagination and you make it tangible. It now exists. Before, I could show people scribblings or I could tell people my story, but I couldn't actually point to something and say those 121,000 words are the story that I want to tell. And I've done that. So now that exists. To give you a little insight into the writer's process or the writing process, that doesn't mean that tomorrow you'll be able to read it either on my blog or buy it in the bookstore or whatever. The first draft, as I said, this is when the idea becomes tangible. We've got it on disc now, so we are ready to go. And when I say ready to go, I mean now starts sort of the shaping process. The first draft is the clay, and now we have to take our tools and actually turn that clay into a sculpture. So I don't know how long the next process will take, but I can say that I am not one of these writers that goes 10 drafts. Some do. Some writers will have 15 drafts of a novel. Just every time they have a new idea, that's a new draft. And they'll, cut out old ideas, add new ideas, edit the sentences, and by the time you're done, they're on draft 26. I'm not like that. I try and give it some time and then do a reread where I sort of do my rough editing and carve out what the real story should look like, prune away side plots that I might really be in love with, but when I'm objective, I know don't really move the story. And then I end up with something that really looks like the novel, that really looks like the story I'm trying to tell. Then I start giving it to an actual, honest-to-God professional editor. Now, I love editors, and I don't just say that because my day job is being an editor, of editing other people's stuff. But I know what an editor does, that an editor takes that clay and that rough sculpture that I've made and then turns that into the actual piece of sculpture that I'm trying to create. Now, that doesn't mean that they turn around and rewrite the novel for me, but that means that they're the ones who know what I'm trying to do and can look at it and specifically tell me what to carve away. Any reader, any friend can look at your novel and say, I liked it, I didn't like it, I thought it was kind of slow in the middle, I don't know, I didn't get it, those type of comments. But the editor is the one who is trained not just in grammar and sentence structure, but in organization and everything else, who can really look at it and say, now, in this particular paragraph, I don't think you expressed this idea well, or 3 pages ago, you said this, and this new thing here sort of goes against that. So what are you trying to say? And really helps you then formulate it into the best novel it can be. So I generally don't go more than 3 drafts. So the initial draft is making the idea tangible, and once I have that down, I then give it to a editor after I've, as I said, gone through it. The editor then gives me an armload of suggestions, and from that, I write the second draft. That second draft is basically the book. And at that point, I usually give it again to an editor to basically say, okay, here's the book. Now go through it one more time. Make sure when I was adding new paragraphs and hacking out all this stuff, I didn't make it unreadable. I didn't, cut sentences in half, and the new stuff isn't grammar stupid and everything else. So then the second pass gets another edit. And from there, the third pass is basically the final deal. The third pass is polished. I don't say that to put down people who go through 10 drafts. It's just you can play with these things forever. You can literally have a novel that you write when you're 20 and at 60 be polishing it away. That actually happened to a degree with The Deviant, my first novel. I got the idea for it in my early 20s. I didn't start writing it till the very end of my 20s. And then I spent really the majority of my 30s playing with it, trying to make it better, changing this, changing that. And I can look back and say, yes, The Deviant is a much better novel, having been published, last year, than it would have been had it been published a decade before. But I also think that if I would have understood the process, I could have condensed all of that tinkering that I did. From here, I think I'm probably going to be doing my own sort of honing of the first draft for maybe a month or so, and then give it to an editor, and then will come the second draft. Then after that, as I said, there's a quick edit and a quick third draft, and then it's looking into my options for publishing. So that's not to say that since I'm happy in telling you that I'm done, you're going to get to read it tomorrow. But that's to say that if you have enjoyed The Deviant, and if you haven't given it a look or checked out The Deviant's page on orrenmerton.com, please do, because you might like it. You will get another thing from me to read. This novel is different in the sense, not just, obviously every novel is different, hopefully, you're not just writing the same book 10 times, but The Deviant is urban fantasy. It's a story about a vampire in contemporary small-town California, but this story is a science fiction story. It's what's known as a first contact story, meaning when extraterrestrial first come to this planet. It takes place in the near future in 2025. And that's all I'm going to say for now. I started about 10 minutes ago saying that the Ember After song Misery would play into what I was going to talk about this podcast. So the reason is that now that I'm done with my novel, there's no immediate writing projects ahead of me. I have some editing projects going, and obviously my day job is as a music tech editor for a major publisher. But those aren't taking my free time so much as that's my work time. So now is a great time between now and Comic-Con, which is at the end of July, to really get down to brass tacks again with Ember After. And I've had this EP in progress since around when I started working on my second novel. But when you have a family and a day job and other interests and things you want to do, your free time is particularly limited. So this EP has been dragging out for a very, very long time. And now I finally have at least a month to just really cap it off. And it's going to be a song or two. The song you heard, Misery, is absolutely going to be one of those songs. And maybe one or two more with the standard usual suspects of Ember After collaborators. And there'll be an Ember After website redesign and really a push with Ember After to really get stuff out there and hopefully stuff that you would enjoy. So comics have become a very, very major part of Michelle and my existence For those of you who aren't following the Comics Corner podcast, and I hope you are, we do a almost weekly podcast. In other words, there's one every week, but it's not always 7 days or less between them. But we do a Comics Corner podcast every week. So even though there hasn't been a Guide from the Perplexed podcast regularly, if you want to hear regular podcasts from me with my wife as well, Comics Corner is the way to go, where we talk about comics and everything else. If you've been listening to a Guide from the Perplexed, you heard those segments. Now we've really expanded them out, and that's become it's a ton of fun to do. We really enjoy it. And at the same time, we do get feedback from people, and there are a significant number of listeners and more joining. So I'm very excited about that, and it's something that we really enjoy. So we keep doing that, and that plays into where we see comics in our future as well. So there will be more about that on this podcast as well. Well, I think those are mainly the things that I wanted to talk about, so I'm going to call it a day. Thanks for listening to a Guide from the Perplexed number 4. Again, check out OrrenMerton.com, check out The Deviant, check out Ember After, and thanks for listening.